Good everyone and welcome to this video. Today we have the Rank 2 daily test for lineups, and today we're taking a look at Japan. Now I will warn shall we say, the viewers in advance, this lineup is a bit of a bodge job, so I've not been able to do a lot of what I want to do, because Japan's tech tree for tanks is very bare. Now, obviously that's kind of what Japan was really known for. They didn't build too many tanks. But there is still quite a few Japanese tanks that could potentially feed their way into this, and personally would really bolster what you can potentially make. Obviously, as this series is, shall we say, known for, you can, of course, change any vehicle in this lineup, but of course this is intended for newer players who are just starting out with a game and want to go down a specific nation. And of course, as we've gone on, we've covered vehicles that we can potentially replace vehicles with, but Japan is going to be one of those where we really struggle with that. So, I've chosen the Japanese 2.7 lineup. This is because this is the most consistent, and this is the most forgiving for a newer player. And, well, I say forgiving, Japan is not a forgiving nation for new players, but you get my point. The planes are, but the tanks certainly aren't. These are quite tricky to play sometimes. So we'll start out with the Chi-He. So the Chi-He will be very familiar to the Chi-Has that you've driven earlier in the tech tree, and it pretty much is just that with slight improvements. You have a little bit better frontal armor, which won't really save you, but you do at least get better turret armor, so that's at least something which could potentially save you. You do also get the same gun from the Chi-Ha Kai, which you can see down here, and of course I've had to throw in the Chi-Ha Kai because there's no real options here. But this gun's okay. Like, it's not great for 2.7, and is really why I think the Chi-He needs to go down in BR. But I digress. That's Gaijin for you. They love to just punish tanks like this. But like I said, the overall armor and mobility will be roughly similar. You can see here, though, the engine on the Chi-Ha Kai is 170 horsepower. This is 240 horsepower, so you do get a bit of a horsepower upgrade. You do also gain not almost 3 tons of weight, but, you know, it's a sacrifice you have to make. It's got alright mobility, but of course it does take time for it to maneuver, so just bear that in mind. And this is something that you have to consider, but at the same time, this is probably one of the best vehicles you have access to in this lineup. In terms of replacing the vehicle, well, I'm just going to point the Japanese tech tree out. As you can see, it goes 2.7 for medium tanks, and then straight up to the Chino at 3.3. There is no unfortunate replacement for the Chi-He, and it is a perfect reason why Gaijin even needs to introduce new models of the Chi-He, like the one with the tracks armor on it, like a late version or something, just to really bolster this bloody tech tree, because as you can see, it is relatively bare. Like, it does have, obviously, a decent amount of vehicles, but just not enough to fill in the gaps, and, well, that's kind of where I've had to piece this lineup together as I've gone along. But yeah, this is probably your most consistent vehicle in this lineup, and that's really why I've chosen it as your main grind vehicle. Then we move on to something which you can obviously change depending on how you feel about it. The Chi-Ha Long Gun. Now, when this tank first came into the game, I honestly thought it was fake, I'm not gonna lie. But did some Google research, and no, this is not fake, this is legit. And obviously reviewed it, enjoyed it, and had a blast with it. Quite literally. So for those that don't know what this is essentially the Chi-Ha that you've been driving earlier in the tech tree. But they've ripped the turret off, ripped the entire top off, basically. They've decapitated this poor tank, and stuck a destroyer's 120mm gun on it. Yeah, this is definitely something you'd see in Photoshop, but, well, it's not Photoshop, this is a real vehicle. So why have I picked this? Well, this is the more aggressive option for a new player. The reason for that is because, obviously, the shells are really good. 1.87 kilograms of TNT, you do get HE as well, and this is just an excellent gun that's really easy to aim, and is just extremely powerful. But of course, the downside of that is 4 of your 5 crew members are, let's just say, they better have good leg strength, because this is their positioning. Well, I mean, the gunner gets a nice seat, so does the driver, but the poor commander's on one knee, the loaders are on one knee, like, it's not exactly the easiest, but it's the more aggressive option because obviously it has pretty much no armor. Like the driver's pretty okay protected from machine gun fire, but that's about all he's going to be protected by. But yeah, there's no protection for the crew up here, and even light machine gun fire and near misses from artillery will kill you. So this is definitely the more aggressive option, but this is the more forgiving vehicle for newer players. If you do want to replace this vehicle, there are two options. There's the Hody 1, which I personally quite like, and is pretty much this, like the Chiha Longa, but obviously this has a 75mm, like a typical tank destroyer of this sort of era. You do have a little bit more armor, but of course, it's still a Japanese tank, it's not exactly stellar. And it's also got a rear open top crew compartment, so that is something to consider. Alternatively, there is the Hony 3, which is essentially the Hony 2, or the Hony 1, sorry, with slightly reduced armor for the main gun area, or the casemate, I should say. But the main difference is it has a fully enclosed 25mm casemate. This is a lot more forgiving, and this is personally the route I would pick. Now, of course, it is a lot heavier. It's almost as it's actually heavier than this. So it is 16.8 tons with the same engine, so you are going to be a lot slower than the competition. But I'll quickly put it on the screen and everything. But you can definitely see like what this thing brings to the table. Whilst the roof is still vulnerable to aircraft, you have a 5-man crew still, so you still keep a good survivability rate. You still have the same top speed, but of course it is a lot heavier. But the gun is just as punchy if you can get it to penetrate its target, and it's definitely a solid vehicle to replace it with if you wish to do so. But of course, as I said, the more aggressive option for a new player would be this. Next vehicle is the Chiha Kai. This is another one where you cannot replace it because, again, this is just not possible. Now, this is normally where a light tank would be, but of course, Japan doesn't really have any light tanks. In real life, they did, but Gaijin refused to add them. So this is all you have to bring. You have to just pretty much bring a Chiha Kai as your backup medium tank. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but of course, your mobility is lower than the Chihi, your armor is lower than the Chihi, which, to be honest, the Chihi is not exactly breaking any armor records, and the turret armor is also lower than the Chihi, so you pretty much just have to take a downgrade, and this is just unfortunately how the cookie crumbles. And as I said, the reason for that is because Gaijin refused to add anything new to Japan. That isn't top tier, of course. And as you can see, the low tier lineups really suffer because of that. Now, of course, all of these vehicles in the lineup so far can do a lot of their tasks that you need to do. But of course, the only task that this lineup cannot do is the heavy tank and the light tank task. But of course, you have medium tanks for the light or medium task part, but you don't have it for scouting. So you can't use Japan for scouting. At least not till rank 3. Then, of course, we come to the AA, which isn't even Japanese, but, well, what do you expect me to do? I'm not going to give you the freaking the Soki, am I? And even then that's an up tier, but, I'm not going to give you the Tarsei when this is just a better vehicle. This is the M16 MGMC. Now, if I believe I've already covered this vehicle in the series, in the US part, and, well, this vehicle really needs no introduction. This is a quad-mount M250 caliber machine gun, pretty much strapped on the back of a truck, and, well, it's great. Like, of course, it doesn't have much anti-tank potential, but it doesn't need to. This thing isn't really meant to do that. It can kill, like, light stuff and things like that, but you don't really need to, it's something where, like, you can bust some vehicles, but it's something where, it's not ideal. But of course, you have a fast traversing turret, which is really useful. You have a really good mobility as well, 148 horsepower with 8.6 tons, top speed of 45, good reverse gear as well. Of course, fuck all armor because it is a half track, but this thing is your best SPAA, period. Like, it until you hit stuff like the Sub 1-2, and I haven't even finished Spain this thing because I just haven't had time to do it, but this vehicle is a lot of fun. Of course, you won't be getting it for a bit, but you can see my point. This thing is a bit of a beast. Now, of course, it does have crap armor, but most AAs have crap armor. But the simple fact is, this is probably your best use of an AA until you get higher in the tree. Now, of course, once we get to the rank 3 lineup, this will not be featured because it's not a rank 3 vehicle. But I will mention it that you can bring this along if you want to. But still, this vehicle will cover your AA tasks, no problem at all. You will not have issue with this vehicle. Moving on to the planes, we do have the D4Y1. This is the allied reported name of Judy, and this is a lovely little plane. It is a nice plane in terms of maneuverability. It does have some offensive guns, but of course, it does have the lowest bomb load of the Judys. So let's go over it. So I briefly covered this plane before on the channel, but it has a alright engine, 1200 horsepower, which isn't too bad. It's not the worst, not the best. But of course, it's actually really fast for what it is. Top speed of 343 at high altitude is not bad at all. Combine that with really good maneuverability and two 7.7s in the front with 600 rounds, it's definitely something where, like, you know, it's not bad at all. Now, of course, it does fall short of its bomb load, only having access to a 250kg bomb or a 500kg armor-piercing bomb, but you have to make some sacrifices, and like I said, with what this thing brings to the table, it does have very good characteristics. And as I said, it's also really maneuverable, so there is that. It also does come with a dive brake, which is really useful, so that can also help with your dive bombing accuracy. Now, the one thing that annoys me, I don't know if anyone else can see it, but if you look at this angle under here, these are pylons. Those should be for 60kg bombs, but Gaijin don't let you put it on this one. That's why, when it comes to the replacement of this vehicle, if we go over to aviation, I would suggest the D4Y2. Now, of course, this thing on paper doesn't change a huge amount. Has a slightly beefed up engine and everything. It has about 100, nearly 200 more horsepower. Of course, you do lose some ammunition capacity in the front, which is fine, because again, this thing's more than maneuverable enough, you can get these shots on target. But where this thing makes up is its improved weaponry capability. So of course, you can bring these small rockets, which they're really only for aircraft and light targets, so I wouldn't recommend it. But you can also bring the 500kg armor-piercing bomb, which we've already covered, 250kg bomb, which we've also already covered. But then also, this thing has access to custom loadouts. So you can bring the 250kg bomb, the 500kg bomb if you want, and you can just see. We, of course, can't bring too much. We can only bring, really, the 500kg bomb and a pair of rockets, because the 60kg bomb weighs too much. But as you can see, you can bring the rockets, you can bring bombs. It's not too bad. It's obviously not going to be the best bomber in the world, but as I said, it makes up for that with its maneuverability and its effectiveness. Of course, being a Japanese plane, it doesn't have any armor, but it doesn't need to. This plane more than makes up for it with its ability, and it's really forgiving. But of course, the D4Y1 to get you started will be more than enough. Then we come to the fighter. This was actually quite a tricky one, because obviously this is technically a rank 1 aircraft. Now, of course, there is there's no Kai-43 that is there, and the rest of the Japanese planes that are classed as fighters don't really fit the bill for what we're looking for. Obviously, I want these vehicle lineups to be as friendly as possible. And a lot of the time anyway, the daily tests only require you to spawn in a rank 2 vehicle, and then you can use rank 1s. This is sort of why I'm breaking the rule here, but you'll understand why with how good this plane is. The Kai-43-2 is the Kai-43-1, but you don't have to unlock the 50 cals to make it really good. This comes with 50 cals as stock, and it comes with some bombs, which, as you can see, are quite meaty in terms of size. 250kg bombs on a small, nimble fighter like this, with a good enough engine for the battle rating, this is not bad at all. Now, of course, in ARB, this is an entirely different story, because this plane isn't that great in ARB, but you get my point. We, of course, do have 250 rounds per gun, which is pretty sufficient. The guns do come with a slight high explosive round, and it's not bad at all, and the HE does hit a really hard punch. Now, of course, if you want to deal with tanks a lot better, you can bring the Tracer Belt, which does have a little bit more pen, but realistically, you're not going to be penning tanks with these too much anyway. The bombs are going to be what carries this thing. With how maneuverable this thing is, getting these bombs on target is so easy. And trust me, you'll love it. But anyway, I'm going to leave you all to it for today. Obviously, this is a bit of a shorter one because obviously there isn't much to replace these vehicles. And as I said, with the Kai 43, the only option to really replace it per se would be the A6M2N, but well, its bomb load is significantly less. It's very maneuverable, don't get me wrong, but the problem is it's also very easy to hit that float, which catches on fire. Same with the N1K1 Kyofu. This just isn't adequate enough, in my opinion. So yeah, personally, just stick with the Kai 43 if you're going to do that. But anyway, I'm going to leave you all to it for today. I hope you enjoyed seeing Japan's coverage in this series, and of course, we will be moving on to China, where we'll be taking a look at, I believe, the 2.7 lineup as well. Of course, in the case of China, there's a bit more wiggle room, but, you know, I can't really blame Japan for that because Gaijins don't love Japan, and that's kind of a shame, really, because I like the Japanese nation. But unfortunately, this is just something that probably won't ever be fixed. Of course, in the future, if there is a change to the Japanese tech tree where there's a load of light tanks added, I will redo this lineup and I will recover it in a video in the future. But given how long Japan's been in the game, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Anyway, I'm going to leave you all to it for today, and I will see you all on the next one.